John, the youngest apostle, wrote his gospel when he was an old man, perhaps in his 80s. And he wrote from memory what Jesus did and said so many years before. And for John, the most unforgettable experience was probably the Last Supper, when Jesus spoke of his love and friendship for the apostles, and this within hours of his arrest and torture and cruel execution. John remembered it. It was a meal by candlelight that began with Jesus kneeling in front of each disciple and washing his feet. It was unforgettable. John's place at the table was next to Jesus. They shared food from the same dishes. The bread that was broken and handed around at that first Eucharist was handed to John by Jesus himself. The principal source of the gospel readings at the Masses during Easter time, are from John's recollections of the Last Supper. During Easter time, the Church wishes us to revisit the upper room and to hear what Jesus said to his beloved apostles, because his words are meant for us as well. Jesus' words on that occasion are an instruction on the risen life. You recall last week's gospel. The scene was the Last Supper, where Jesus said, "Love one another as I have loved you." This is the risen life. And Jesus speaks in today's gospel, again at the Last Supper, "If you keep my word, the Father and I will come and make our home in you." This is the risen life. And again in today's gospel, Jesus says to us, "The Holy Spirit will be given to you to teach you." The Holy Spirit, you see, is God's Easter gift to us. Listening to the Holy Spirit is the risen life. And in today's gospel, Jesus says, "Peace I give you." It's another Easter gift. We should nurture and cherish peace, because peacemaking is the risen life. Now, God's peace is not readily understood. We have many conflicting ideas about peace all around us. So many voices offer their versions of peace. They use the word peace, but it's not the same as the peace that Jesus speaks of. Caesar, who rules with an iron fist, speaks often of peace. The peace we learn in the embrace of God dwelling within us and whispered to us by the Holy Spirit is much different. And so Jesus says in the gospel today, "Not as the world gives peace, do I give it to you." We are a samurai tribe, a highly militarized nation. The financial costs for military purposes in our country is beyond our ability to imagine. Mathematicians at the Center for Defense Information have counted all things military and say that this year it rounds out at about $900 billion for the United States. That is 1 year's spending. And if this is true, it means that we are paying $1.7 million per minute, and it seems to ever increase. What should be even more disconcerting is the moral cost of war to the human spirit. We become desensitized to the grim reality of war, the human cost. The 20th century included 250 wars and 109.7 million war-related deaths. Civilians are the major victims of war, estimated in modern warfare to be around 80%. The death of civilians is dismissed as collateral damage. A basic Christian rule is this: the targeting of civilians can never be justified. And yet, 80% of the deaths in war today, 80% are civilians. The real collateral damage is that people do not seem to notice, do not mourn the millions who die. It is the death of conscience. Pope Benedict has said, war is the worst solution for all sides. And again, on another occasion, he has said, war is not the answer to terrorism. In his final encyclical, Pope John XXIII said, the encyclical's name was Peace on Earth, he said something very, very true. He said, making peace is more difficult than making war. Now, in every age, people have prayed for peace. And some hope that magically God will cause all guns to go silent. Has God been silent to our prayers? God's answer has been to send us prophets to instruct us in peacemaking and to challenge us to engage in the difficult task of making peace. Mostly, God's prophets are not listened to or are silenced. A small example of this, during the Vietnam War, there were some prophets like Dan and Phil Berrigan. They were sent to jail. Thomas Merton wrote about peacemaking, and he was silenced by his Trappist order. In our own day, we have the example of a prophet named Archbishop Oscar Romero. He was assassinated. By ourselves, we cannot fashion God's peace. Only God can give us a true and just peace. Today, Jesus says to us, I give you my peace. It is the gift and the work of those who have risen with Christ to a new life.